Hi, I'm Lul. Today we will see how to test the web applications for many vulnerabilities, and also we will see the basics of hacking methodologies plus exploitation. If you're new to web security, it can be difficult to know where to begin. That's why I've created this suggested learning path to point you in the right direction. For complete beginners, I recommend starting with our server-side topics. These vulnerabilities are typically easier to learn because you only need to understand what's happening on the server. Here's how to get the most out of the web application security testing paths. Firstly, we will start with SQL injections, then we will proceed with authentication, directory traversal, command injections, business logic vulnerabilities, information disclosure, access control, file upload vulnerability, server-side request forgery or SSRF, and XXE injection, which is called XML external entity injection. So without wasting our time, let's get started with SQL injection. SQL injection is an old but gold vulnerability responsible for many high-profile data breaches. Although relatively simple to learn, it can potentially be used for some high-severity exploits. This makes it an ideal first topic for beginners, and essential knowledge even for more experienced users. SQL injection, SQLI, is a web security vulnerability that allows an attacker to interfere with the queries that an application makes to its database. It generally allows an attacker to view data that they are not normally able to retrieve. This might include data belonging to other users, or any other data that the application itself is able to access. In many cases, an attacker can modify or delete this data, causing persistent changes to the application's content or behavior. There are a wide variety of SQL injection vulnerabilities, attacks, and techniques, which arise in different situations. Some common SQL injection examples include retrieving hidden data, subverting application logic, union attacks, examining the database, and blind SQL injection. 1. Retrieving hidden data. Consider a shopping application that displays products in different categories. When the user clicks on the gifts category, their browser requests the URL. This causes the application to make an SQL query to retrieve details of the relevant products from the database. This SQL query asks the database to return all details from the products table where the category is gifts and released as 1. The restriction released equals 1 is being used to hide products that are not released. For unreleased products, presumably released equals 0. The application doesn't implement any defenses against SQL injection attacks, so an attacker can construct an attack like this. This results in the SQL query. The key thing here is that the double dash sequence is a comment indicator in SQL, and means that the rest of the query is interpreted as a comment. This effectively removes the remainder of the query, so it no longer includes and released equals 1. This means that all products are displayed, including unreleased products. So let's see how it looks like in a real web application with practice. The web application will look like this. It is a shopping web application that will interfere with its own backend database with a secured query language, SQL. Let's just know more about this site and let's find out where the SQL injection vulnerabilities are found. Sometimes it is impossible to determine where the SQL injection will occur. So we will use the SQL map tool to automate our staff. By the way, for those of you who don't know what SQL map means, SQL map is an automatic SQL injection tool.
Listen to that. How could you make a song written by a machine sound so beautiful, so beautiful?
As we can see from the output, the getParameter category is injectable. So let's intercept the request and modify or inject some SQL query to retrieve hidden information. As you can see, we successfully injected a SQL query to retrieve hidden information by setting 1 equals 1, which is always true, and by commenting on the restriction SQL query. So let's see if it is really injected. As we know from the output of this buggy web application, it displayed or retrieved hidden information to an unauthorized user. If this video has helped you or if you learned a new thing from it, please don't forget to subscribe, share and leave a comment. This will motivate me to keep creating hacking videos. Let's jump into the second SQL injection, which is subverting application logic. Consider an application that lets users log in with a username and password. If a user submits the username Wiener and the password Bluecheese, the application checks the credentials by performing the following SQL query. If the query returns the details of a user, then the login is successful. Otherwise, it is rejected. Here, an attacker can log in as any user without a password simply by using the SQL comment sequence to remove the password check from the where clause of the query. For example, submitting the username administrator, and a blank password results in the following query. This query returns the user whose username is administrator and successfully logs the attacker in as that user. Let's proceed again with practice. Remember, to determine whether the web application is vulnerable to SQL injection, we have to brute force the web application login part by using dozens of SQL payloads. To do this, I have linked SQL payloads to do some dirty stuff. But here we don't have to play with dozens of SQL payloads because our web application is extremely vulnerable. So we will use SQL commenting to eliminate the restriction. As you can see, we successfully bypassed the authentication part with just a SQL injection. If you are interested in expert your hacking skill, I recommend you to go further on it. Disclaimer: don't you ever try to test or hack without the owner's permission. Else you will end up behind the bars. And also, I'm not responsible for what you did. Because this video is only for educational purposes. I hope I will see you in the next video.